This is another edition of RIFF Radio, a presentation of riffmagazine.com, your source for music news, reviews, interviews from the Bay Area and beyond. On this episode, we talked with singer-songwriter, New Jersey-born, grew up in Canada, then moved down to LA to pursue a music career. His latest EP is A Modern Tragedy Volume 2. You've seen him tour with Nothing But Thieves, Smashing Pumpkins, Young the Giant. He was featured on Mike Shinoda's most recent album, and he'll be in San Francisco coming up in April 3rd at Slim's. Few tickets still left. Get them at eventbrite.com. Now we welcome in grandson taking a few minutes from the road to join us here on Riff Radio.
I lose a bit of myself with every selfie. Lose sleep over wealth, it's not healthy. Finding a new religion on Yelp to come help me. Praying to the label itself, do not shelf me. In the middle with the beggars and rejects. Reading between texts, weed, liquor, and sex. She say she love me at dusk, but at dawn I pack up my things and I'm gone. So, but I will not apologize. Been a lot of places in this life, and I did a lot wrong I can't make right. Never been a perfect soul, but I will not apologize.
Okay, so starting off kind of more generally, in the past few months, you released your second EP with A Modern Tragedy Volume 2. You're on the road on your first national headlining tour. I think just about every show is sold out. Just kind of, where's your head at right now in this point of your career? How are you feeling about all this?
Oh, man. First off, I feel humble and really overwhelmed by the support that we have had this year and in the last 12 to 18 months or what have you. And I'm trying to just meet where I feel to be incredibly good luck and good fortune with preparation and work. So I'm lucky to have the best backing band in the world and the best crew with me to take all of this stuff on. And I'm trying to write better music than I ever have and just meet it all with deliberate work instead of just I don't know, sitting around counting my blessings. So it's been good, but the busier we get, the more work there is to do, and I love doing it because I believe wholeheartedly in the message that I'm trying to spread, the messages and encouragement I receive back from this community. So the further I dive deeper into my relationship to this music and to the grandkids, the more excited I am to take on these different challenges, be it the first headline tour or the new project being released or whatever it is. Like it's a good time. It's a good time.
Now, in terms of your songwriting, I mean, one of the things I really like is you have a clear point of view. You don't mince your words on the issues that are important to you. You know, given the political climate, do you feel like there's a lack of, real focused, aggressive, kind of radical activism in rock right now?
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. I do think that when entertainment and journalism are kind of so seamlessly blended together at this kind of juncture of media and entertainment, I think that the greater question is, what do you do with that? And when you are just bombarded with information constantly, as a human being, regardless of whether you're a musician or not, what you do with that space that you occupy in a recording studio or on stage speaks volumes, even if you fill that space with silence. So I really do think that in 2019, with all of the sort of fascist or populist rhetoric, with a very deliberate campaign to keep people disengaged, I think that your apathy as an artist, especially as a rock musician in a genre that was founded on counterculture, anti-authority, I really believe that apathy or that silence speaks just as loud. So I think that some people go to turn on their radio or put on Spotify to escape the very real gravity of the world that they live in. And I'm certainly not here to tell people what to do with their free time or what to do with your space to create. But I do think that I was certainly surprised by the lack of aggression or participation. But I do think I will say that it is absolutely trending in the right direction. There are artists like Bad Flower and Fever 333 and Young Blood and all sorts of the new generation of rock and roll that are willing to tackle some of these issues head on. So I consider myself in good company. And if you were on the road for this No Apologies tour and you saw the response that we get and the sort of profound feedback that we get, it's not a great hardship to tackle these things. People want to talk about them, and when you give people something of substance, they give it right back. So I feel very, very grateful to receive the kind of feedback that I do get from this community, and that keeps me from entertaining those ideas that maybe I'm in over my head or something, which I actually touch on the EP.
Right. Now, I had a chance to see you playing with Mike Shinoda down in LA at the Palladium a few months back, and was just blown away. Not only just in the songs you're playing, but just in the general message you're conveying when you're on stage. I mean, you feel like the revolution's going to spontaneously break out right there. Just so much power and urgency. Is that the type of energy that you want to bring to a live set when you're on stage?
Absolutely. I think that word urgency comes up a lot. And I think that my intention is to be in some ways provocative, and let people draw their own conclusions. I think that one of the big things that we want to foster in people, whether or not they agree or disagree, is to think critically about what it is that they're consuming. And I'm happy to be the object of that critical analysis, because I think that that's the sort of literacy that is kind of lost in the 15-second social media culture. I think that it's very easy to just form a narrative and move on, but some of these topics, we don't have the answers necessarily for what to do about them, but we want to express that when you're in a system that's failing, how do you hold that system accountable to change? And we want to give people a cathartic space to express their disillusion or their frustration. And what we do with that, and whether you agree with everything I have to say up there when it comes to gun control or climate change or transparency in politics, what have you, we encourage people to have different opinions and express them, but I would so much rather be a part of something like that than pander to as broad an audience as possible. And frankly, I'm very grateful that an artist like Mike Shinoda took us on the road and enabled us to speak to that large audience that might not have come to that show expecting to think about these sorts of things or wanted to, but we were able to, after the fact, share on Twitter or on Instagram and express, I didn't even know that I cared about these sorts of things. I didn't even know that I was into that sort of music, sometimes even purely from a sonic perspective. Sometimes it's purely, we might get alternative fans to go heavier into rock, or rock fans to go a little more electronic,
Right.
It's always been about, this project has always been about asking questions and being provocative, both in the context of what it is that's being talked about, but also in the writing and producing of the songs with my collaborator group.
You never get free, lamb to the slaughter. What you gonna do when there's blood in the water? The price of your greed is your son and your daughter. What you gonna do when there's blood in the water? Look me in my eyes, tell me everything's not fine. All the people ain't happy, and the river has run dry. You thought you could go price of your greed is your son and your daughter. What you gonna do when there's blood in the water? When there's blood in the
So I mentioned the new EP earlier. Do you feel like in going with more of an EP release route, or some of the new options that something like streaming services give you, does it allow you to be more topical as a songwriter? Like you can see something in the news and have a song written, recorded, released in a compressed amount of time than maybe if you're going through a full album cycle?
That's a good question. I think that it might enable that, but I don't think that necessarily. I think you look at people like the creators of South Park, are two of the most influential creators certainly in my in my life, and those dudes have been doing this a lot longer, and frankly doing it a lot, turning these things around a lot faster. So I don't necessarily think that, but I definitely do think as a recording artist, it's important to have one finger on the pulse of what your audience gives a shit about. Mm-hmm. So I do think in some ways that has enabled it, but even more so than just from like a context perspective, I do think that as an emerging or new artist in 2019, I think that the way that people consume content, I think the way people consume music is such that we did not yet see the merits of doing a long form album that was going to largely fall on deaf ears. Over the course of the last, let's say, 2.5 years, we've put out about 14 songs, maybe 15 songs. I think the first 5 were in a single format, and now we've put out, I think, 8 new songs because 2 of the songs off of Modern Tragedy Volume 1 were already released. So in total, we've had 8 new songs come out through this EP format. And the question is, if I had put out 15 songs on a sort of album in September 2016 with my first release, how would these songs have been received? Would they have had the same sort of shelf life? Would we have been able to generate the sort of momentum that we have in this short amount of time? Whereas now when I get to sit in the studio and we already have this tour under our belt, I have a more clear understanding of who I am as an artist, who my fan base is, and what they want. I can take all these things and begin to carve out a more cohesive debut album. So in some ways it's a little bit like cheating, but I really just do think that our relationship to how we digest entertainment is changing, and therefore our strategy for how to get that content out should change with it.
Now, one of the really cool things you've been doing on this tour is partnering with local grassroots or community organizations in each of the cities you're performing in to set up meet and greets with fans. How'd that idea come about, and how do fans get involved in that?
Oh man, I'm happy that we finally get to talk about that. So it's always been an intention since the onset of Grandson to take some of these themes off of people's headphones and manifest real change. So that was where the founding of XX Resistance came from, which is the sort of movement, not non-for-profit space that we have created. And at first it felt really, really lofty and ambitious. It seemed like something that I had to wait until I was selling out stadiums to be able to accomplish. And what we've found, especially when talking to these grassroots community organizers and leaders, is that you can start from anywhere. The important thing is just getting started. So we looked at these meet and greet opportunities, which have largely become this very stale revenue stream for artists to basically just make an extra $20, $25 on a ticket. In a quick photo and laminate, and instead of just trying to milk people for more money, it was like, how can we nurture people's people's frustration. So many people come to this music wanting to find a sense of empowerment, wanting to feel a part of something. And we're all that we want to do, instead of me having the answers of how to do that, instead of excess resistance having its own agenda, what seems to be the most effective way to make change in local communities is to just empower the local communities themselves and empower people that are in these communities directly, that have the personal experience and know what needs to be done. So much of it ties back to youth empowerment and voter registration. When we talk to leaders about how can we most quickly see the effects of our participation, those are the things that come up. So that's the main focuses on this tour. And are we going to change the world off this campaign? No, but the important thing for me as this project is growing fast is to always have one foot in making a difference right here, right now, as we continue to look forward. So we'll continue to do that all the way through the No Apologies tour and beyond. And it's fun. It feels better to do good, period. When you feel like you're connecting with people, when you feel like you're making some small difference, even if it is small, it just has made the whole tour for me feel more fulfilling and more meaningful. And I've received feedback from a lot of grandkids that echo that same sentiment. So I just feel grateful that these communities have been willing to let us work with them. And we've already begun to put together thousands of dollars in donations for local grassroots organizations across North America.
That's great. Now, just to wrap up here real quick, we're coming up on it again. Another election cycle coming up in 2020. I mean, you're already, like you've mentioned, you're taking steps for positive change with your fans. Are you more optimistic than you were a couple of years back in the direction you see things going heading into this next cycle?
Man, what a good question. I think I, like a lot of people, first off, I'm in the last election cycle, I was only 22, 23, and I really had no idea. But I think, like a lot of people, I was pretty blindly optimistic, and I was kind of blindsided by how that election turned out. In some ways, I am absolutely more optimistic based off of my experiences on the road. I've talked to so many people across North America and beyond who are fired up. And so when I hear those conversations, you can't help but feel like there is this grassroots, there is this progressive movement that is coming. But still, I feel unless we're able to hold accountable our legislators to make meaningful change, to try and troubleshoot what is inherently a broken system, and frankly, unless we can try and foster some sort of bipartisan, more objective approach to sorting out who the right leader is moving forward. As long as we enable the Fox Newses of the world to sensationalize and to tap into people's most primal fears and anxieties, I do still think that we have a lot of work to do. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'll just say that we have a lot of angry songs still lined up.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Have good luck on the road.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll see you here in San Francisco in a few weeks.
See you in San Francisco. I can't wait. Thanks again for your time.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
When the Black Hawk flies, head right for the hill. They put a hole in the back of my head, called it suicide. Woke up with these holes in my hands from the day I was crucified. You decide if you wanna ride, can't stop us when we unify.